Hi, this is Mark from Wiki Design. In this Spline tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can use the Spline API to toggle between 3D models in real time. So let me show you an example right here. As you can see, we have 3 different buttons up here, and I wanted to have it where once you click one of these buttons, it's going to automatically change out these 3D models like in real time. So tell me that's not really a cool feature right there. So if I click right here, you're going to see it goes in between this model of a stool into like a computer chair. And then this one's going to be a little bit different. If you see, the carpet is just changing the shape. So instead of like this circle, I'm having it where there's like 6 different sides right here. So now I'm going to walk you through how you set everything up and how you can add this to your own website. And here we are inside of Spline, and what I'm doing is I'm just using one of their free library templates right here. So in order to pull this off, what you have to do is 2 different things. You need to have a second model that's going to toggle, and then you need to set a variable that will then be triggered by the API. So let me show you how this is all set up. So underneath objects right here, this is all pieced out, so each one is its own little object. So in the first situation, that is called, if you scroll down here, photo 1 is this one. Let me zoom into here so it makes a little more sense. So this is photo 1. Photo 2 is actually being hidden. So that's the one that you can't see. So let me show you what that looks like right now. So if I go into here and change these variables for the scale to 1, you can see right here that's going to pop up. So all I did was just duplicate this model and then changed out the color of the frame and added a different picture. So what you need to do is actually hide it. And what I'm doing is, if you looked right here underneath scale, it was set to 0. So that's how I'm going to be able to toggle on and off, basically, is triggering between the scale of 1 and the scale of 0. This will all make sense in a few minutes. So let me go back into how it was. Let me zero all that back out. So photo 1 is on by default. So that's what scale 1 means right here. Photo 2, as you can see right here, is at a scale of 0. So it's still there, but it's just being shrunk down to basically 0. So now I'm going to jump over into the chairs and show you how I have that set up. So underneath model right here, chair 1 is set to scale 1.39. So I wanted to give an example where it doesn't have to always be a scale of like 1 and a scale of like 0. So this is a situation where I wanted to have it totally different. So the scale of this stool is at 1.39. Now if I go into the chair 2, of course, just like the picture, it's being hidden. The computer chair is actually here, like where my mouse is, but you can't see it because I don't have it at anything. It's at 0. So if I go 2.85, which is what this needs to be. So if I do 2.85, you can see there's the chair. Okay, so as you can see, there's the chair. So let me go back into zero that out. So now you can see I have a chair sitting out in this space right here. It's set at 0. And then the carpet's a little bit easier to manage. I just wanted to show this example. So if I scroll down into the carpet, you can see right here, I'm not going to change any of the scaling or positions. What we're going to actually be changing is, if I open up this ellipse right here, this right here where it says sides is at 40. So I wanted to have it where the user can toggle and it will look like this. So I wanted to be able to scale in between 40 and 60 sides. So now let me show you how I have the variables set up, and then we can start to look at the code and how I was able to implement this all with the API. Now I'm going to jump into the more complicated part about this, and that's how to set up the variables. So inside of your scene, just click right here, like in the blank space, or down here in the empty part of your scene. And what you could do is on the right side right here, go underneath variables. So click these 4 little buttons, and it's going to pull up this new pop-up right here. So of course, you're not going to have any variables to start out with. So in this situation, you're going to want to click the plus button and then select this one called number. Because what we need to do is use variables to then control all of the size or scaling of these things dynamically. So what you need to do in this situation is I have 2 picture frames, 2 chairs, and then 1 carpet. So that's what I have right here. So I'm calling photo 1. So if I go on my models right here, I have this one called photo 1. Let me scroll up here. So that's photo 1. And then photo 2 is the other one that I created that's there, but as you can see, the scale is at 0. So let me go back into my variables and show you that we need to make sure that photo 1 has a value of 1, photo 2 has 0. Then what you need to do is go underneath each one of these. So where it says photo 1, underneath scale, if you look right here, the scale by default for photo 1 is 1 across the board. So X, Y, and Z are at 1, which is what we want. Then what you need to do is click this little button right here. It's a little bit hard to see. I'll point an arrow to it. Is once you click that, you're going to want to assign it to this variable called 1, photo 1, which has a value of 1. Then down here, same thing. You're going to want to make sure your Y has photo 1. So let me go ahead and choose that. And photo 1. So across the board, you're going to want to make sure all of these say photo 1. Now what you need to do is go underneath photo 2 and do the same thing, but instead of assign it to photo 1, assign it to photo 2. So it's going to start out at 0. So this is one of the most important parts of this tutorial, is if you don't assign the scales correctly, when you click the button on the website, it's not going to work correctly. So what we're going to be doing now is with JavaScript code, you're going to dynamically say when you click this button, you're going to toggle in between these values of 0 and 1. Once you start to look at the code, it will start to make a lot more sense. So you need to do the same thing now to your chairs. So if I go over into my chairs, I can show you I have the variables for chair 1, which is at 1.39, and chair 2, which is 0. So let's go ahead and go into chair 1. And you can see right here, if I click the plus button, each one of these is assigned to chair. So this was a situation where the scale isn't at 1 exactly, it's at 1.39. And then just like the other one, you're going to want to make sure that chair 2 starts at 0. So if I go to chair 2, it's, like I said, sitting here in space, but you can't see it because the scale is at 0. So I need to make sure that I assign these chair 2 to 0. So as you can see, when I click on here, these say 0. And you might be asking, that chair needs to be at like a different scale, like I showed you, like at 2.85. You don't have to worry about that because we're going to be doing that inside the JavaScript code. And then the final one we're going to be targeting is the carpet. So if I select the carpet, like I said, we're not going to be doing the size changes between the scale. What we're going to be doing is changing the sides right here. So anytime you go into Spline and you see when you hover over any of these values and it has that little like plus button, that means that you can target these things dynamically or through their variables. So kind of a similar situation. Let's go into our variables. And instead of having 2 values, we just need to have 1. So as you can see, I have this one called carpet and the value is at 40. So it's got 40 sides right now. So I wanted to start it out at 40. And then inside the JavaScript code, I'm going to have it where you can switch to like 6. So just like the other ones, you're going to want to make sure that this is assigned correctly. So when I click the variable button up here in the corner, it's at 40. So once you have your scene set up like this, then what you could do is just click the export button. Underneath code export, you're just going to want to make sure that you click this button, update the code. And then I'm going to give you all the code that you need, in order to make this all work. But what you need to do is make sure you grab this one right here. So this is like your URL with your scene spline right here. Just go ahead and click that button, and then you're going to be able to paste it into my code, and it should work pretty good. Okay, so now we are on an Elementor page. But what's cool about this code is this is going to work on any platform that you use. So you're not locked into just Elementor. You can use other page builders or even something like Webflow. Now let me show you how I have everything set up, and then you can kind of add this to your website. So this is all going to be in the description below, so you can just copy the code below and then paste it in as is. And I'm going to show you line by line kind of like what you need to change out to make this all work. So the very first line right here is your canvas. So you're going to want to make sure you have that at the top. This is how it's going to get rendered out in the browser. This right here is kind of important. As of recording this right now, they're using version 1.093 of this build for this runtime.js. Now, what I do recommend is if you can host this file locally, you can go ahead and do that. So if I go back into my Spline scene, if you look right here, if you click this button where it says download zip, you can get that runtime.js file and then just host that locally. But in this situation, I wanted to just use it on their servers just for this demo. So the next few lines, you don't have to worry about editing. You don't have to worry about this. But this one right here, this is that URL that you need to make sure that you copy into your own, because this is my scene spline right here, but you need to go ahead and make sure that whenever you have right here, add it right here. So now I'm going to highlight the 3 different sections that you're going to need to edit, add, remove, whatever it may be. So this chunk of code right here is the button 1. Then this chunk right here is your button 2 code, which is when I click this, it would change the chair. This chunk of code right here is, so when you click it, the carpet will change. And then this little chunk of code right here, I'll walk through at the very end. And this is just to make it where the page isn't going to like jump to the top when you click on one of these buttons. So let me go to the button number 1 first. And you're just going to change out a few values depending on how you have your layers and everything named. So the very first thing is we're going to be making sure that we call the buttons button 1. You can see right here button 2 and button 3. So that's what these are up here. I'll cover that last. But if you're going to want to make sure that you have 3 buttons, just keep it simple and just call them something like button 1. Then right here, this code is just JavaScript basically saying it's listening to whenever someone clicks button 1, it's going to do something. And the action that it's going to do is going to be turn off one of these models and enable the other one. So what you need to do is, in this situation, this one right here is called photo 2, or I'm sorry, this one right here is called photo 1. Then the photo 2 is right below it, but remember it's at scale 0 right now. So you can see right here, this is the model that it's trying to call right here, and then this is the variable name. So you're going to want to make sure if you name it the same, you just have to change the name right here twice. So you just change this out to photo 1 and change this out to photo 1. Then in this situation, you could just keep this on right here. So this right here where it says 1, this is the scale. So this is using some pretty cool JavaScript like toggle type of code where it's going to automatically know which one you're on, and then it's going to display it correctly. And then right here, you just change out where it says photo 2. And then this is the variable called photo 2. So it's going to know which one you're on, and then it's going to toggle in between the values of 0 and 1. So if I go to the front end right here, when I click this button, it's going to automatically toggle in between the first photo and the second photo by changing the variables to 1. I know there's a lot of steps in this thing, but this is how it has to work in order for it to, tie all together. Now let's jump into the second one, and this one is a little bit different. If you remember, I'm not using the scale of 1 for everything. I'm using different scale values. So the stool is at a scale of 1.39, so you'll see that value right here. And then the computer chair is at 2.85. So this is a situation where it's not going to be automatically a 1-to-1 scale. And just like the top one, all you need to do is change out your variable names right here. So I'm just calling the model chair 1, and then this right here is the variable for chair 1, chair 2, and chair 2. And then what you need to do is make sure that your chair 1, which is the stool, is at a scale of 1.39. The computer chair, which is going to appear, is at 2.85. So let me go back into here and show you. So chair 1, just so it makes sense, is at the scale of 1.39 across the board. Then chair 2 by default is at 0, but when you click that button, it's going to change that scale to 2.85, and then that JavaScript will turn this stool off. So that's how that one works. If I go here, the stool is at 1.39 right now. Then that JavaScript code will turn it off and then scale up chair number 2 to 2.85. Now let's jump into the bottom one right here, and this is for the carpet. So you're going to notice that the one thing that is different is there's only one line right here with the variables instead of 2. And that's because we're not actually toggling in between 2 different models. All we're doing is, if you remember, we're just changing the values of right here, the sides. So this is a pretty cool example where you could switch in between going from 40 sides to 6. So you just want to make sure that you put your 2 values right here. So you want to start at 40 and kind of like end at 40. And then if the user clicks, that's what the 6 is right here. So you could change this number to whatever it may be. I just learned that you can't go underneath like 3 different sides in this example. So we're going to have it where the user, when they click on carpet, you could see right here the variable will change from 40 to 60. So if we go to the front end of the website, you'll notice that it starts at 40. And when I click this, it can go to 6 sides. So that's what's so powerful about this type of stuff right here, is that you could all change this kind of like dynamically, all with JavaScript. And then of course you need to make sure that you add your buttons. So in this situation, I'm just using 3 different Elementor buttons. And all you have to do in this situation, if you're using like a page builder, is give each one its unique ID. So underneath each button for CSS ID, you're going to make sure you call them the same thing that you use in your JavaScript right here. So right here, I'm going to highlight, so it's button 1, button 2, and button 3. So if I go into button 2 right here, it will say button 2, and of course, button 3. So that's what's so cool about this, is you could actually just use straight up HTML if you're using like more of a static website, and this will all work the same exact way. And then I mentioned that this code right here, this is not always needed, but if you're using something like Elementor, this is all going to make sense on why you might need this. So let me go ahead and actually remove this code right here and then show you what happens. So let me go ahead and remove that. I'll update the page and I'll go to the front end and show you what's happening. And here we are on the front end of that page. So let's say you have your model, and watch, I'm going to click this button right here and watch what happens. When I click change photo, it changes the photo, but what's happening is the browser's automatically kind of scrolling up to the top. And that's because when you use something like an Elementor page builder and you use their button widget, it's automatically going to have to link somewhere. So inside the URL, you can see right here, it goes to like this pound right here. And that means it's staying on the same page, but that's what's causing the jump. So let me try it one more time. So if I click change carpet, it will change the carpet, but then it will jump to the top of the page. So that's why you need to make sure that if you don't want to have that type of functionality, you need to add that code back in here. So now if I go into there, and once I add the code back, you can see when I refresh the page, it will work correctly. So I can scroll down the page, and then it's not going to jump to the top. So everything's working correctly. But like I said, if you're using kind of like a static website, you might not need this functionality, but this is only if it's automatically jumping to the top. So that's how I was able to pull all of this off using the Spline API. Now I know this one was a little more complicated, but once you look at the code a little bit, all you really have to be concerned about is these lines right here. You just need to always make sure that your variables match up correctly and your model names or your layer names all match up. And then these are the values right here. So once you get all that understanding, you're going to notice that you have basically unlimited power to be able to toggle anytime that you have any sort of variable options inside of Spline. So with button changes, you can change the angles, the sizes of these things, the position, rotations. You could do a lot of different things. So like I said, anytime you hover over one of these little elements and you see that plus button, that's a good sign. That means that you could start to target any of these values using their API. And that's it for this video. Make sure that you like this video, subscribe to this YouTube channel, hit that bell to receive notifications when I release new Spline tutorials like this. Again, this is Mark from Wiki Design.